Hello and welcome to A Critical Dragon, where I talk about narrative in film, television, and in books. And today I want to talk about Christmas movies and patterns. So when we talk about narrative patterns, it's part of this sort of structural approach to looking for the patterns inside. It's what Campbell did with The Hero with a Thousand Faces, taking a whole lot of fairy tales, looking at common elements and movements within them. And in order to do that, you tear away the surface level, you tear away the detail, and you're looking for general movements, abstract notions, themes, concepts that are running through the core. And I want to do it with Christmas movies because there are some really curious things that come up. And also, it's the season. So let's take the quintessential Christmas story that almost everyone knows, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. And think about all of the different adaptations and how the Oscars always get it wrong, because clearly, if the Oscars were ever accurate, A Muppet's Christmas Carol would have swept the board. I think we can all agree on that. And I think you can also tell from the tone. This is a light-hearted look at this, but there are some interesting things. So I'm going to try and balance the two. When we think of A Christmas Carol, Scrooge has now become synonymous for a type of character, much the same way that we use the term Grinch. But someone who dislikes Christmas, someone who is hyper-capitalist, someone who is very selfish, someone who is very egocentric, someone who is cruel and cold and cares only about themselves and not anyone else. And they need to learn the true message of Christmas, the true spirit of Christmas, learning to love our fellow beings, learning to see what is truly important in life, which is our relationships with other people and not necessarily the material goods that we accumulate. Now, if you take that as a general concept, how does A Christmas Carol work as a narrative? So Scrooge is visited by three ghosts. Well, technically he's visited by four, but the three ghosts of Christmas. So the first one takes Scrooge into his past, the ghost of Christmas past. That isn't just to show Scrooge a Christmas in the past. That is so that Scrooge can contrast how he used to be with how he is now. So moving a temporal distance, moving a distance in time, allows Scrooge to contrast where he currently is with what he used to be. And one of the reasons this is useful is getting away from the day-to-day, the minutiae, what you consider to be normal, and seeing it in direct contrast and comparison to where you are now is a great way to get insight into our current position. And so for Scrooge, he sees through this distance of time the person he used to be. Now, part of the thing about the change in our personalities over time is that we don't really notice. We are on the inside, and most change happens relatively slowly. It is made in small incremental steps. And so we think of ourselves as being relatively constant. And it is only when we take enough space between one point and another and then compare them that we see how radically different we have actually become over time, because that's the distance that we move. We move through time. So Scrooge gets a direct comparison, and this allows him to see that he was actually different, even though he thinks that he has always been the same. He's always been the same person. He's always been Scrooge. He has lived his life. He doesn't see anything different until he is directly confronted with it. And he sees that in the past, yes, he had a woman that he loved. He had a boss who he admired, and his boss was generous. His boss, actually, who he always thought that he was kind of emulating, he is now very, very different from. And he sees his boss in a very different light because he's now measuring him against the things that he currently values. And so he sees his boss now negatively, whereas before he saw him very positively. He was a positive role model. So it allows that contrast between the present and the past. It shows us who we are in a starker relief. Then we have the ghost of Christmas present. And the ghost of Christmas present is not really showing Scrooge, this is who you are, and telling him. It's showing Scrooge the impact that Scrooge has on other people from their perspective. So Scrooge is very egocentric. He is very selfish. And by seeing Bob Cratchit's life, by seeing the impact on Cratchit's family, by seeing Tiny Tim, Scrooge gains a greater appreciation for how his actions have ramifications for others. Because again, Scrooge is egocentric, he is selfish. And this is a way of breaking that down and giving him empathy and realizing that his decisions don't just affect him, they don't just affect his underlings. They actually affect everyone associated with that. And he gains a greater appreciation of the web of relationships and also how other people have different things that they prioritize, have different ways of looking at the world. So it is eye opening. So again, he gets a contrast with what he deems are this is exactly how you should act. And of course, everyone should think this way by seeing other people's opinions. And they're not being framed or phrased in a way with him present in the room that they're aware of. Because sometimes we change how we speak to someone, whether they can hear us or whether they can't hear us. Sometimes we can be a little more honest if we don't think that we are being observed. Sometimes we reframe things politely when we try to get across the sense of it, but we try to frame it in a way that the other person will be receptive to. All of these things alter how we interact with others. Because Scrooge is witnessing all of this and they don't know he's there, he's getting a completely different view of who he is from the position of other people. And then we get the Ghost of Christmas Future, which is the warning, the threat. This is how you're going to end up. You're going to end up dead, but you're going to end up dead alone, forgotten, unloved, uncared for. All of the material wealth that you have accumulated, all of the power that you have accumulated is going to lead to nothing because you're going to end up in the dirt. Is that where you want to end up? It isn't going to save you. You can't take it with you. And so there's a very strong, powerful moral message about what is good in life. And it's not just killing your enemies and hearing the lamentation of their women. That's more to do with Conan. Scrooge is confronted with the fact that he is living his life and his life is actually empty of these things. Yes, he has money, but that money is not buying him happiness. That money may be buying him comfort. He is accumulating a lot of it, but he's not putting it to any use. He's just using money to get more money. And so by seeing and being reminded directly, being confronted by the reality that you cannot take it with you, we get that quintessential Christmas message. Christmas is not just about the material things, it's actually about love, friendship, family. It's about ephemeral things that are very hard to put a dollar amount on. Now, that's not to say that it isn't more comfortable to cry yourself to sleep on silk pillows and Egyptian cotton sheets. Clearly, money can buy comfort, but it can't truly buy happiness. It can buy comfort, it can buy luxury, it can buy those things. It can make your life easier in a lot of ways, but it can't buy happiness. And so that's the big message about this, that bizarrely enough, for all that Christmas has become a very consumerist, commercial holiday, almost all of our narrative messages about Christmas are about eschewing that. Take Gremlins, a very dark Christmas story. In that, the ultimate thing is the battle in a department store, the destruction of a department store, the destruction of the symbol of the consumerist Christmas. That, shouldn't be overlooked. That's a key aspect of that Christmas story in Gremlins. And of course, in Gremlins, it's all about Billy taking responsibility, his father learning a lesson, the power of friendship and the friendship between Gizmo and Billy at the end standing with his girlfriend and the two of them looking lovingly at one another as the world is in tatters and destruction around them. It's a dark Christmas story, but again, it has that moral message running all the way through. When we think of Home Alone, a story about a sociopathic child who commits attempted murder on two inept petty thieves. That's one way of describing it, I suppose. But in Home Alone, we could describe it as the quintessential wish gone wrong story. He wishes he got rid of his family. Now he has to live out the repercussions. We could look at it as a build a better mousetrap story because a lot of it is about those traps that he builds. We could look at it as the young child beating the big bully sort of trope that we get in stories. It is all of those things, but it's also a Christmas story because in this we have the character. Temporarily forgotten his name. What is Macaulay Culkin's name in that? Kevin. Kevin McAllister. Kevin wishes to get rid of his family because he's fed up not getting the slice of pizza that he's wanted. He's fed up people drinking his soda, having to share a bed. He's fed up with his family imposing on his life and what he wants. In fact, a very egocentric, selfish point of view. Now, slightly different to Scrooge because it's not focused on that element, but you can see there's a central aspect of Kevin's character that is very similar. And through the story, what he realizes, we go through that celebration of the freedom of being able to eat all the pizza you want, drink all the soda you want, sleep in a big bed, do all of those things. And once he's exhausted that, it's done. What does Kevin ultimately long for at the end? He wants his family back, even Buzz, even his cousin. He wants them all back because Christmas is empty without them. His life is empty without them. That even though they can be annoying, even though they impact his life sometimes quite negatively, they are important. And that is the thing that has been emphasized. He's seen all of this whole holiday season where people are happy to be with their families, sharing time with their families, all of that soft, wonderful, hyper-saturated lighting about, oh, isn't this wonderful? Kevin's missing out on all that because he is alone. He is being confronted by being alone, just like Scrooge is confronted with dying alone. So it's putting it in sharp relief and saying, is that where you want to end up? And of course, Kevin goes, no, he wishes for his family back. So we can see that in both A Christmas Carol and in Home Alone, the same thing is being emphasized. This idea that Christmas is about family, Christmas is about friends, Christmas is about love. It's not about the things, it's not about the material aspect. Going on a trip, that's awesome. Congratulations. The trip isn't as important as the people you spend it with, the memories you make. That's kind of what Christmas films are trying to sell us. So then we get onto an entire sort of subgenre of Christmas movies, which are the Christmas romances. And in those, you see a lot of them on channels like Hallmark, and they are essentially repackaging a lot of very standard romance tropes where you have high status individual, low status individual. So the lord with the serving girl, the lady with the gardener, Lady Chatterley's lover, if you will. But quite often it's the contrast of those stations. But the way a lot of them are framed in the Christmas versions is high status individual from the city meets low status individual from the homegrown, salt of the earth rural community or small town community, more accurately. And again, it's about contrasting that, the emptiness of the very high dollar value living in the city with all of its modern conveniences and all of its material goods, but going back to something that is quintessentially more human about the interactions. Quite often, these are framed with the man or the woman, whoever the high status character is, returning home to the family for the holidays and then meeting up with a high school sweetheart or someone they used to love or someone they remember from their past who shows them this whole true meaning of Christmas and they fall in love, opposites attracting and all of that. But it's the same technique of contrasting who they are in the city, which they think that is normal. They've established their baseline, that's normal. They then move somewhere, usually back to a hometown or somewhere else, that then allows them to contrast their norm with something else. And quite often with the going home for Christmas or going home for Thanksgiving, I think a lot of the American ones have Thanksgiving as a focus. It's that movement through time and space that allows the main character to get new insight into who they are. Initially, they see it as, oh, well, this is all rubbish. But they grow to appreciate that there's something to it that they don't have in their relatively empty modern life in the city. And it's almost, well, I wouldn't say almost all, a lot of it is framed that way. A lot of it is contrasting the materialism of big city life and high dollar amounts with a much more honest, down to earth myth about small town life. And that is a big sort of romance tradition in these sort of Christmas versions of these stories. Interestingly enough, a lot of the posters advertising them, a lot of the thumbnails that you'll see for them will have a red and green color scheme to let you know it's about Christmas, and almost identical poses across multiple of them. They're not particularly imaginative, but red and green being associated with Christmas time because presumably holly and the berries on holly, but also Christmas trees and Christmas lights. And again, a lot of that soft focus, hypersaturation of the warm colors being used for a lot of these romance sections. But in principle, it's the same sort of thing of taking the semi Scrooge, because you still want them to be kind of likable, and contrasting them with a new way of life that shows their current way of life in sharp relief. And they see the danger of that life, of them ending up alone or having someone who actually cares for them as a person and not their wealth or their position. Big sort of holiday Christmas element added into all of these things. And that takes us on to a lot of the various Santa stories that we see. Santa, uh, he really does have a lot of mishaps on Christmas Eve, where he falls off his sleigh, he falls off his roof, he's knocked off his sleigh, he's knocked off his roof, someone steals the sleigh, someone steals the reindeer. All of these things happen quite often. Um, a diamond in the rough kind of character, someone who has been in the school of hard knocks. Deep down inside, they're a good person, but circumstances have made them cold or angry or in some way uh, selfish and out for theirs. But through their interaction with Santa, usually trying to help him, trying to repair the damage that they might have done, they learn that no, it is better to give than to receive. It's not about the present itself, it's about what that present symbolizes. It's about the joy of spending time with family, with friends. That is, again, one of the big messages that underlies a lot of the Santa movies. A number of them actually have a father figure who is cold or removed from the family or estranged from the family, that through being Santa for the evening or helping Santa for the evening, learns to love and care for his family again. That's one of the big sort of elements of a lot of the Santa movies. So again, taking someone who again thinks of their life as normal, but through this magical interference, the supernatural interference, gets to reframe their life, gets to contrast their current life with who they thought they were going to be, who they should be, what they could be. And they suddenly see it with a completely different lens because they're taken out of their normal setting and placed somewhere else, juxtaposed with who they thought they were. So again, it's a lot like Scrooge being shown the past, that these people shown the past and then shown all of the different interactions in the present. That's very much the same thing that a lot of these Santa movies play into. That Santa takes the time on Christmas Eve, the one night of year that he works, to educate these people and, like the ghosts of Christmas past and Christmas present, show them a different way of living, and they learn that lesson. And so there's underlying all of these different films, even Gremlins, there is nostalgia at play, there is sentimentality at play, and overall there is a message that family and caring for people and loving people, that is the thing that you should be taking away from all of this. You might not know this, but Gremlins is both one of my favorite Christmas movies as well as a terrible Christmas movie to let children watch. And that takes us on to the complicated question of, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Yes, it is set at Christmas time. Yes, there are Christmas trees everywhere. Yes, there is someone who basically he's separated and estranged from his family because of his job. He lives in the big city and he decides to go and visit them at Christmas time in LA. And lo and behold, there are bullies. In this case, thieves, robbers, who are trying to kill him. Yes, it's escalated the action up a certain level, but over the course of it, he learns the important thing. Like, he could have just left. He could have just rung it into the LAPD and let them deal with it. But no, he takes responsibility. He tries to save his wife. He tries to save the other police officers. He acts as a hero because he takes responsibility, because ultimately he learns that, okay, he chose his career to stay in New York instead of moving with his family. He chose that. That was an element of pride. It was an element of selfishness. He was unwilling to sacrifice these things for his family. And yet the film ends on that high note of him with his wife, his estranged wife, that now they're going to try and make a go of it. They're going to try and be together, that maybe he will reconsider being a New York beat cop, that all of these things will change. It's set at Christmas time. We have all of the Christmas carols, we have the Christmas references, all of those things are added in. So in a lot of respects, it's doing the same thing. It's taking this character out of the norm, out of the established perception of the world, moving them this time geographically to LA from New York, a set of circumstances that challenge their preconceptions about what is important and what is not important. And through all of that, they realize that some of what they were valuing is not as important as the things that they gave up. And so you can see elements of it are clearly a Christmas story, are clearly part of this tradition of educating a central character about the dangers of selfishness, about the dangers of putting your life, career, and money and prestige ahead of everyone else. There are dangers associated with that. And Christmas time is the time to take a moment to think about it, to reposition ourselves, to reconsider our position in life and our relationship with others. So, in those respects, of course, Die Hard is a Christmas movie. On the other hand, it is about him crawling through ducts and shooting people. Not exactly a great Christmas message, but then now there's a small child trying to kill two burglars. Like, how can we consider Home Alone, where he definitively tries to kill a bunch of people? That's Christmas, but Die Hard isn't. Both a lot of violence. Anyway, from this, you can see if you pare away a lot of the identifying elements, a lot of the surface detail that make these things unique, even if you move beyond some of the specific plot elements that occur as we are following these narratives, at heart, there are a lot of thematic and structural movements that are using the same techniques, that are telling the same sort of story and hitting on exactly the same notes. Whether or not that is enough to consider all of these things Christmas, when a lot of the romances are stereotypical romances using those tropes, those patterns, those behaviors, but they set it at Christmas time to make it a Christmas version. Home Alone, it's a build a better mousetrap kind of story of a boy defeating bullies, but it's set at Christmas time to give it that added nostalgia and sentimentality. Die Hard, would Die Hard work as well if it wasn't at Christmas time? That was something that gave it an additional element. It added to it. Whether or not it's enough to override any other perception of it, yeah, that's up to you individually. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you all have a safe and wonderful Christmas season. Happy holidays to you all, and I will see you in the next one.